Thank you. I want to thank the chairman as well, and the vice chair, or the ranking member as well. You mentioned early on, and you were about to expand upon it, and I think you got interrupted. You said there were three main lessons from the Cannon building that we could look at to maybe as we look at Rayburn. What were those three?
Sure. Thank you, Congressman. So the big three, we discussed some in detail, is that by doing Cannon in so many small phases, that was inefficient because of the mobilization and demobilization of the contractor, and also being tied to artificial constraints. The second one, which is sort of tied to the first, is we want to separate our construction from the operations of Congress as much as possible. So the more we can have our construction be on one side of a building and Congress operating on the other, and not have to intermix this much, because disrupting operations of Congress is certainly something we always want to avoid, but the inverse is true too. When we have operations of Congress that have to interrupt the options of the construction, that means we do a lot of construction at night, we do a lot of construction on the weekend, we pay a premium for that, that's inefficient, and we don't get as much productivity out of our contractors because of that. So the second lesson is separating construction from Congress as much as possible is desirable. And then the last one was, I spoke about just a moment ago, was about change management. We want to make sure that we nail the design up front, that we get our program of requirements identified, that has been vetted, and then any subsequent changes, unless they involve design oversights, differing site conditions, or life, health, safety, really have a high bar for implementation, so we don't have kind of that good idea fairy hitting us way late in the project that's adding cost and time to the project.
And as somebody that's been involved with historic preservation most of my life, it's a passion of mine. Do you see the changes? I mean, Cannon was built in, if I'm correct, 1908, and then you had Rayburn in the 1960s. Obviously, the material that was used in the construction of Cannon quite a bit different than what it was done in the 1960s. So as you're looking at that expense and, you know, and the delta between what you had planned and then ultimately had to spend, looking at the Rayburn, I'm going to imagine that there's going to be, as you mentioned, asbestos, significant mitigation that's going to be required for that, much more so probably than in the Cannon. Am I correct with that?
That is correct. They integrated asbestos specifically more into the Rayburn building than they did in Cannon. It's literally embedded into almost all the fibers, especially the structural components in Rayburn.
And that in itself also would affect the reason we're having issues with the mechanicals, because in many ways you can't, I'm doing this more anecdotally, but the reason that you can't access a lot of these areas of the Rayburn is because of the threat of exposing with asbestos or lead paint exposure. Yeah.
It is absolutely a complicating factor in all the work we do in Rayburn, yes.
One other thing, you mentioned how you had to fabricate some of the inner workings within the air duct system at the Rayburn building. And you're finding that, I mean, in your role, you find that all over the Capitol, correct? I mean, just like our subways, for example.
Correct. More so in some places than others, but yes, when we're working with historic components, as you pointed out, most of that is custom work in order to do that. When it comes to the mechanical components, because some of ours are so old, a lot of that has to be custom fabricated. You know, I can point to many examples if you'd like.
And you know, to the end of, you know, talking again anecdotally about, you know, having escalators that work and all of those things. I mean, the great concept. I mean, we still are a functioning office facility. Well, in a sense, we have to be mindful of preserving the past. And so how, and I only have a minute and let you expound and we'll follow up, but how, while you are going through the process of making it a building, a living building, but in the same sense, having to deal with the historical significance of what you can and cannot change, it'd be much more efficient to replace the subway under the system right now than it would be to refabricate all these things. How do you have to, what's the process you have to go through in order to do something like that?
So you're absolutely right. It's a complicated process. It's balancing a lot of factors between form and functionality, historic preservation, the desires of Congress, the ADA. There's a lot of factors that play into it. We have what's called an architectural review board that we work through internally with our stakeholders to make sure that all the voices are being heard, and then we make these decisions in the best interest of the future functionality of the space as well as in light of historic preservation, because we want our future visitors to have that same wow experience when they come to our campus that we get when we see it today.
And I would agree with the ranking member in terms of a new structure, and would be happy to work with you on how we would begin the process of design. I'm assuming that the environmental scan has already been done. You've already done the soil samples and all those things. All right, with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I yield back.